What up, everybody? Welcome back to Operation Moksha. As always, I am your host, and today we're going to be doing a deep dive into generalized anxiety. And this is something that I dealt with for most of my life, and if I'm being totally honest, it got to the point where I basically didn't want to live anymore and almost unalived myself. However, I found some really cool concepts and ways of working with my anxiety that allowed me to integrate it, make sense of it, and actually turn it into sources of strength, wisdom, inspiration, and power that propelled me forward rather than just being this cacophony of nonsense in my head that made me want to die all the time. And so I'm going to tell you how I dealt with it, how you can look at it to start dealing with yours, but first, I have a couple things I want to set up first. First of which being, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I didn't graduate college. I barely graduated high school. But what I am is some fucking guy who messed his head up so badly that he was forced to figure out what had happened, because I basically backed myself into a corner where it was either die or get healthy. So the ideas that I'm going to present to you today are the ideas that I use to overcome my anxiety, depression, PTSD, paranoia, self-destructive habits, all kinds of stuff. So take this with a grain of salt. Know that I'm just some guy who figured some stuff out, and hopefully this helps. Now, the next thing I want you to take into consideration is that anxiety can largely be a physical thing. I fought this for a really long time. This is something that people had told me, and I didn't really want to embrace it for whatever reason. I don't think I wanted to get better, but it really can oftentimes be a physical thing, or physical things can make it a lot worse. So I'm gonna go through a checklist of some things that you should really be keeping an eye on. Do you drink enough water? Do you eat enough good food? Do you get enough sleep? Do you get sunshine? Do you exercise? Do you spend time with good people? These are some of the physical things where if you don't have these things in your life, they can cause more anxiety. I can't tell you how many times I've been anxious or worried or something like that, and I drank a glass of water, ate some food, and felt totally better. And I know a lot of y'all motherfuckers are living off weed and iced coffee. So you may need to drink some water, you may need to eat some food, you may need to get some sunshine. Some of these things can actually be really quick fixes. So try that out first. And if you started to deal with all these things and your anxiety is still persistent, then everything that I'm gonna share with you after this is gonna start to help with all that stuff. What anxiety really is, or what I found it to be for me, is really a complexity management issue. What it is, or what it was for me, a bunch of different voices in my head that all had really important things that they want to say to me, really important lessons that I needed to learn, and they were desperate for me to learn these lessons, but I didn't want to face these parts of myself yet. They made me uncomfortable, they scared me, I didn't like what they had to say, I wasn't ready to make changes, and so I just kind of pushed them away. Enough of this over enough periods of time leaves it so that all those parts of you that are fighting for have their voices heard have to fight harder and harder and compete with each other inside of your own mind to get listened to. And in my own personal experience, this is essentially what anxiety was. It was all these voices getting louder and louder and more intense, constantly fighting each other until it felt like there was a war going on in my head and I just wanted to not exist anymore to make it stop. However, what I did to be able to deal with that was I started listening to the voices one by one. And I've talked about this in prior videos. And in order to be able to really listen to them, there's a key thing that you need to understand. Because something that a lot of people get wrong is they think that they're feeling their emotions, but what's really happening is they're getting beat up by all these different parts of their emotions, and they feel terrible, and they think that that's what it means to really feel an emotion. But that's not. If you were genuinely feeling an emotion and letting it move through you, even if it was really uncomfortable, it would still have this liberating catharsis, almost ecstasy element to it. It feels really good when these things are leaving you, even if it's also really painful. So a really big distinction that I like to make is you don't necessarily want to just be feeling all these different emotions and all these different parts of your personality. You want to be expressing them. And that is a very distinct skill. Because what you're really doing is you're taking any given part of your personality that has some shit to say to you, and you're essentially handing it your internal microphone. And you're saying, here, bro, or whoever, speak whatever you have to speak. And you can journal it out, you can talk it out in therapy, you can work out, you can dance. There's literally unlimited things that you can do depending on how that specific part wants to be expressed through you. But the main idea is making sure that you're taking that part, giving it a microphone, giving it some way to express itself through you. And then if you're doing that, you should probably feel the catharsis, and you should feel that really pleasant, almost ecstatic sense of liberation that comes from it. Okay, so when you want to get started on something as big as conquering anxiety, depending on how intense it can be, that could be a very big order. What you really want to do is start by creating a vision of what your life might look like if you didn't have anxiety anymore, and you could just be calm and confident and engage with the people in your environment or your environment itself in the way that you really want to. So it's important to take a little bit of time and really get an idea of what that version of you might look like, what that version of you might feel like, how that version of you might handle conflict. how that version might handle all the things in your environment that currently cause you anxiety. The reason that you want to do this is because it gives your conscious mind and your unconscious mind something to aim at. And if you can make it real enough to where it feels good, your brain will start to associate that good feeling with where you're going, and it'll start to unconsciously steer you in that direction. So making sure that you form a vision of where you're wanting to go is really essential, because you could just stay in there looking at all these things, but if it's not really in service of a vision or in service of a goal, you could just spend a lot of time doing that and not really going anywhere. Now, the next step is you want to form an identity that matches that vision. And this is a little bit more complex, but you want to take your vision of what it might look like, and then you want to imagine the type of person that lives that way easily without really having to think about it. It's just something happens, cool, I address it in this way. This person is upset, cool, I address it in this way. I'm in this new environment that I've never been in before, cool, I address it this way. And that's, again, you're forming a model for your mind to kind of organize itself around, and you're giving your unconscious something to aim at. And the more real you can make it, the more good you can make it feel, you're giving yourself these unconscious emotions to start aiming towards. So it's really important to craft the vision and the identity of where you're going. And from there, then you can start to integrate your obstacles to that. And so here's how you go about integrating all the different obstacles. Because basically what anxiety is, from my own personal experience of overcoming it, as well as coaching people through it, is basically a bunch of these different parts of your personality all fighting for your attention. They have really important things to say to you, really important lessons that they want you to learn, but they have so much intense energy and emotion associated with them that you can't really bear to listen to them. So you try and push them away, be like, fuck, that's really uncomfortable, that sucks, like, get out of here. However, if you understand shadow integration and the way that unconscious emotion works, is the more you push it away, the more intensely it has to fight for your attention, because it has something really important to teach you that you really need to be learning. And so it knows that you need to integrate its wisdom, so it fights as hard as it can in order to get you to listen. Because the thing about this is actually really cool, is all the different parts of your personality have something to add to you. So if you listen to all of them, then you will learn all the different parts of your personality, what they're for, what they're made to do, and ultimately how they can help you strategize, think through stuff, and ultimately become more wise, capable, and able of handling whatever happens in your environment. Now, for anxiety, this is a little bit tricky because, like I said, there's all these different parts of your personality fighting for your attention, and they're all really intense because they all have really important things to teach you. So as you start listening to all these different parts of your personality, they're really going to be competing with each other. So you might only get to listen to one, and then the next one comes up after just a little bit, and then you listen to that one, and then the next one comes up and you listen to that one. And it's important to know that your mind is going to kind of bounce around for a little bit, but your job is to be the solid, stable, grounding force that can just listen to whatever parts of your personality present themselves whenever they do. Another big key of shadow integration is you want to deal with whatever parts of your mind are presenting themselves to you, the ones that you can become aware of. Those are the ones in your conscious awareness that you can start to work with. Those are the ones that are basically saying, hey, look at me, I'm next. And so when it comes to anxiety, you listen to one, and then it dies down a little bit, and then the other one speaks up, and then you let that one talk, and you're listening and listening, trying to figure out what these different parts of your personality are trying to teach you. And it could be a bunch of different things. And I'll give you a personal example from my own life. So I think I've actually given this example on a YouTube video before, but it just spells this out so perfectly. So I was giving a talk at a music festival a few years ago called Lucidity, which I love and highly recommend. Jonah, thank you for putting it on. I love you. I was about to give a talk here, and it was my first talk I'd ever given at a festival, which was a goal that I'd had for a really long time. And it was on a topic that I knew really well. So I thought I was just going to crush it and wouldn't be a problem. So I was in my room, rehearsing, doing my whole thing, and I was starting to get anxious. And as I was starting to get anxious, my mind was telling me, wow, you suck. You are the worst person to ever give a talk at a festival ever. They should have literally hired anyone other than you. You're going to fuck this up. You suck, don't do it. If I didn't know shadow integration, then I could have just been like, I could have just pushed through and delivered the talk while extremely anxious, maybe done a pretty okay job, but probably felt pretty shitty about it the whole time. Instead, what I decided to do was listen to the parts of my personality that were creating the anxiety in the first place, which is a very uncomfortable thing to do because anxiety can be kind of unkind sometimes. When you're dealing with anxiety, your mind can say some pretty fucked up stuff to you, but you also have to understand that that is your mind escalating and saying more and more absurd and potentially harmful things because it knows they will get your attention. So again, this is just a plea from your unconscious mind to be like, please listen to me. I've been ignored for so long that I'm starting to say these horrible things because I don't know what else to do. Please listen to me. I need you. And so that's what I did. I listened to these different voices in my mind, and I actually got 3 really important pieces of information as I listened to them. Here's what I learned. First one was, you're not speaking from the heart. You're essentially just parroting your old YouTube videos. And I was like, okay, that's a good point. Second one was, you don't actually have a clear intention in mind. You're just kind of speaking. And I was like, okay, also a good point. And the last one was, you don't have the audience in mind. I was like, fuck, okay, fair point. If I listened to a talk given by somebody that wasn't doing those 3 things, I'd be like, this is a pretty bad talk. So what I did was I integrated that wisdom. I started speaking from the heart with a clear intention and with the audience in mind. And as soon as I started doing that, all of the anxiety turned into excitement, because all the things that by my own standards were telling me that I wasn't doing the right thing, or that I wasn't doing what I would feel is genuinely good enough, I listened to them, I took their advice, and now all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is great. This talk is gonna be amazing. You've actually listened to us. By all of your internal standards, what you're doing is now good enough. And so this is the secret wisdom behind anxiety. A lot of the things that you're anxious about are things that are actually good things to be worried about. It's just a matter of how do you go about addressing them. Do you ignore them for so long that your mind has to yell all kinds of terrible things at you in order to get you to pay attention? Or do you listen, look for the wisdom to integrate, and then act on it so that part of you can feel heard, validated, appreciated, understood, and ultimately cared for? If you can create the kind of experience where all the different parts of yourself that come together to create your experience of anxiety, if you can start to listen to them one by one and start to express, as we talked about before, and diminish the tank of unconscious emotion that they're working with back there, they calm down. And the more you listen to them and the more you integrate their advice, they start to trust you. And all these things that used to be causing your anxiety are now just giving you good advice. It doesn't feel anxious anymore. It doesn't feel scary. It doesn't make you feel terrible. It's just like, hey, did you think about this? And if not, then great, you just got good advice. If so, then maybe there's some other emotional issue that needs to be looked at. But anxiety is something I haven't had to deal with in quite a long time. And so now I just take my own internal advice, feel more wise and more strong as a result, and I'm able to tackle whatever I'm dealing with more parts of my personality giving me good advice. So that was just a small example of what it looks like to work with anxiety. I had what people call generalized anxiety, where I was pretty much anxious by everything. Social situations, going to the grocery store, having to go to work, pay bills, literally anything I had to do caused me a tremendous amount of anxiety. So dealing with generalized anxiety that connects to a lot of different areas of your life more than just a specific action like giving a talk is a little bit more complex, because it shows up in a lot of different areas of your life, and so it requires a little bit more work. However, as you start to let those parts of your personality speak through you, the anxiety will start to die down. You'll start to be more calm, and you'll just simply be able to address your reality in a much more calm, skillful, and holistic way. So I hope you see yourself in this. I hope some of this resonates. I've been able to help a lot of people through anxiety with exactly these types of tips. So let me know if you have any other questions about this. I'd be happy to go deeper on any other things that you might need to know about. But I'm Chris Roscoe. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Do you do... Okay.